Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is where we were last time. Do you have any questions right now? Otherwise, I'll just proceed. So this is where we stopped, and I want to emphasize that it is like the standard Euler-Lagrange problem that we are trying to solve. But I also want to give you a little bit of an idea. So if we look at equation 41, what is it that we are exactly doing? What is this alpha parameter and things like that? So what we are trying to do is forget about the second term first. So let's suppose we are only concentrating on the error term. What that would give us is a solution that has minimal error. Now error in a way will never see if we have a physical model for A, the system operator, then the error will never exactly go to 0 because there is always going to be some noise on G out. And so when we say we want to minimize error, it also means if your first term is at about the noise norm, then you should be happy. You should not be trying to go beyond that. But then we have a second term. What we are saying is that, OK, I want a solution that is minimum in terms of error, but then there is a trade-off. OK, that I also want the image to have certain properties. And so I'm going to say that, OK, I can live with slightly worse performance from the error perspective, but I would also like the solution to have some nice properties. OK, and those properties are kind of captured in the Psi function, which is Psi delta of Gn. And we argued last time that when the image had what is happening? What we argued last time is that when the image had any grainy noise or any other appearance like that, then this function like sum over gradients is going to go up. And so we want to penalize that. And so this penalty is in this form of second term, that we want a solution that is as close as possible to data, but we also want to put a penalty there. And so we are going to look at some sort of a trade-off between the two. We will get into more details of how to select this parameter and things like that. But you can see that if the parameter alpha is essentially 0, then we go towards minimum norm error solution. But as the parameter value alpha increases, then we give up on the error performance a little bit, and because there is a trade-off that if I am slightly worse in error, but the property of my solution is meaning my solution looks more of what I want. OK. As I explained last time, this is the kind of cost function we are going to have, and the cost function in general is a function of the input image that we want to estimate, and it's also a function of the gradient of the input image that we want to estimate. And as I was discussing at the end of last class, this is essentially something that you have seen before, which is the standard Euler-Lagrange problem in variational calculus. And you have seen this in classical mechanics where it is called least action principle. And there the solution is the path taken by the system. But here in this problem now, the solution is going to be the image that we want to recover. So let us have a short tutorial on this variational calculus. But before that, I'm going to explain a small homework again that I have posted. So I'm going to explain the steps that I want you to do. So first, you take any grayscale picture, GXY of your choice. Scale the picture, okay? So the picture will have some minimum value and maximum value. So make sure that the minimum value may be already 0, but maximum will be something like 255 or something like that when you read a JPEG file or PNG file or something like that. So I want you to multiply the whole image by a factor, scaling factor, such that the values of pixels are now in a range 0 to, I have just given you some number, but it is something like 3 pi by 5, okay? And what I want you to do is now raise this image to an exponential. So you have exponential I alpha g, and then there is going to be a circular function or circular aperture on it. So this circ function is such that when the argument inside it is less than 1, then the circ function is 1. Whereas if the argument goes above 1, then it is going to be 0. So that acts like a circular filter. So now what we have here is going to be a phase object. So see that uxy, the amplitude of uxy within the circle is 1, but only what is changing is a phase, okay? And I'm just giving you that I want a circular aperture of say 100 pixel radius. So maybe your image should be larger than 200 by 200. And then assume that the pixel size is 2 micron and wavelength is half micron. And then propagate this phase function by a distance of 1 mm, okay? And display the magnitude squared of this propagated field and describe what you observe, okay? So this is a short exercise to implement the angular spectrum essentially. And I think by now you should be able to handle it, because now you have looked at the basic image handling and also you have looked at some Fourier transforms. So now I think this is a next step, and there will be something interesting you will see in the amplitude meaning it is the absolute squared. So it is like a intensity that you will observe if the propagated field was observed on a camera, okay? So I think this is a simple exercise you have to try, okay? And again, the submission is on 19th October. So let us move to our the Euler-Lagrange problem. Is the homework clear to everybody, by the way? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, no, sir.
What happened? Tell me.
Sir, actually, I am not in this lab, so I'm doing only this course. So I
No,
may
I
be
think
facing
that
some
is
issues.
independent. The course is kind of independent of the lab. So I have already explained the angular spectrum, and I
Okay.
think based on the first 2 homeworks, you should be able to do this.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So let us get to some discussion on the variational calculus, and for simplicity, I'm going to do a discussion in 1 dimension first. I know that some of you may want to refresh this out of your classical mechanics, but I'm also going to provide a slightly different perspective that you don't get when you study this in classical mechanics, okay? And what my aim here is that we know that it's Euler-Lagrange problem, and obviously the solutions that we are going to seek, there are not going to be any analytical solutions because the pictures are going to be this, the cameraman like picture. So these are not functions that you can represent by means of sines and cosines and exponentials and Gaussians and things like that. So the solution to this problem of minimization only has to be an iterative solution or numerical solution. And so what we are interested is to do is to meaning any iterative solution or numerical solution of such problem will start with some guess solution. Okay, so I can start with a completely random image or maybe a completely constant image or anything that I want as my first guess. Okay, and then what I have to do is I have to update this image. So if I start with a guess function for gn, and there will be for that guess function, there will be some value, numerical value for the cost function cgn. And what I want to do is update the image. So I want to update the image at each pixel such that the cost function cgn is actually has now a lower value. And I have to keep updating the image such that somehow I reach sort of a minima of the cost function cgn. And from there, meaning once I reach the minima, then I can say that whatever is the updated solution is something that I am looking for. Okay, so that will be the solution of my image reconstruction problem. But we need to understand how to update this function, because now cgn is a single number, but it is a function of all the pixel values in the image and all the gradient values at every pixel in the image. We don't know gn, but we want to find a gene. We only know g out, and we know probably the model a hat that describes the system that I'm working with. Okay, so my aim now is to find this gene image. And typically, as you see already, the images that you have been dealing with, the sizes of these images are at least a megapixel. And so which means that gene contains 1 million variables, and I should be able to solve this in a nice simple way such that I get a image solution where the cost function is somehow at its minimal value. So that, to first order, if I change the image gene to some gene plus delta g, then as our least action principle tells us that to first order, the function c should not change in its numerical value. And so this is our goal, and that is why I am going to give you a short tutorial on the variational calculus itself. You can compare your notes from classical mechanics class whenever you have time. Okay. Now, some of you may have taken classical mechanics class a few years ago, and so it will take a little bit of refreshing your notes. But what we are interested in is to minimize this kind of cost function. C of g is equal to an integral over an L function, where the L function is a function of both the g, which is the image, and also the gradient of the image. And I'm writing only one-dimensional things here, but eventually we will meaning write the final results in two-dimensional form. Okay, and so my aim is that given an image g, we want to vary it. So we want to change the image g to g plus delta g. Remember that image g is a when I say image g, then I'm talking about all pixels of image g. And so delta g is also another image where that denotes the update of all the pixels in the image g. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to update this image such that c of g plus delta g is actually less than c of g till we find the minimum of this cost function. So in our case, gx is an image and delta gx is update to each pixel of the image. Okay, and so what we need is a notion of what we call as now a functional gradient. Okay, so See, if this was a usual calculus, you will have g is a one-dimensional function. Okay, so if c was just a function of x, but now c is actually a function of g of x. Okay, which means where the g has a dimension of the number of pixels in the image. Okay, and so what we need is a gradient of g. So this is actually a functional gradient. This is not a see. Anyways, c is a function which is takes a scalar value, and so what we want is gradient gc is actually essentially partial differential of c with respect to each pixel variable of the image. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find delta g, and we would like to update it such that it is in the direction of the negative gradient delta gradients gc. Okay, so if I go in the direction of negative gradient, then I can hope that the functional value or c of g numerical value will actually reduce. Okay, and I'm going to write this in first order now. You can see that I have added a small function. So c of g plus epsilon h. Okay, so where epsilon is a small number which we will make, meaning in the end we will say that epsilon goes to 0, but essentially this is a notation that I am introducing. So if I think of c of g plus epsilon h, where h is again an image, then what I can write is it is c of g plus a Taylor expansion, which is epsilon of gradient gc dot h, and then there will be terms that are of the order of epsilon squared. And what does this dot actually mean? The dot, the meaning of dot here is explained by means of this integral, which is like a scalar product. Okay, so we have c of g plus epsilon and this integral gradient gc, which is a function of x, and h of x. Okay, and then there will be terms of order epsilon squared. Do you understand up to equation 44? Is that clear as a notation? See, why there is a dot product there is because g is not a single variable, but g, when I write g, it is actually all the pixels of the image g. Okay, so this Taylor expansion has to be done in this way. Is that clear to everybody? Or this is not clear? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now let us see what this gradient g of c is. We will call this gradient gc as the functional gradient, okay, as opposed to your usual gradient in x and y directions. It will be called as a functional gradient. So we are going to do a simple calculation here. I think it will be nice if you actually work through as I am explaining. I'll go slow here. So what is c of g plus epsilon h? Is now integral of over dx of L function, where it is g plus epsilon h and gx plus epsilon hx. Okay, and again, if I do the Taylor series expansion, then I see that this L function can be written in terms of three quantities. So first is L g gx. By the way, gx is the x derivative of g. Okay. The second term is going to be del L del g times h, and the third term is del L del gx times hx. Is that okay? So we are going to do partial, since it's a function of g and gx, we are taking partial derivative with respect to g, and then we have h, and then similarly, when we do partial derivative with respect to gx, we have multiplier of hx. And what is L here? It is the cost function evaluated at particular pixel X. The expression for cost function that is evaluated at a particular pixel X. And then when it is integrated over all pixels, then you get your C function, which is the cost function. Is this clear to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing is we want to look at the third term, okay, which is del L del GX HX, okay. And we can solve this by using integration by parts, all right. And so what I have is del L del GX H, which is evaluated at the boundaries, and then minus the second term, which is d dx of del L del GX times H. Okay. I think you all know integration by parts or integral of a product. And I think this result should be familiar to you. And so if I assume that there is no variation on the boundaries, which means I'm going to take the first term to be 0. Then what I'm left with is something like this. See, if you look at equation 45, the first term in the integrand is just the cost function C of G. Okay. So I'm going to subtract that from the left hand side and then divide by epsilon. And what I will see is it is dx. It's the integral over dx del L del G minus d dx of del L del Gx. And then whole thing is multiplied by H. And so if I go from 1 dimension to 2 dimensions, then I will also have a gy. So G is still the same image, but then we will have to account for 2 derivatives, one in X direction and in the, which is Gx, and then there will be a Y direction derivative, which is Gy. And so everything else will remain same, but if we go to 2D, then the result will be the C of G plus epsilon H minus Cg divided by epsilon, and that will give us this double integral. I'm going a little bit slow, so yes. Hello.
Equation number 40. Explain again. I'm having difficulty in understand that.
Which equation? Are you saying 45 or 46? Which one?
46.
46. Okay. So I'm going to take only the last term, okay, del L del Gx Hx, okay. And if you apply integration by parts, then I have, so you know, you are familiar with the result like dx of u times v or something like that. And then what you get is u integral v minus integral of u derivative times integral of v. Okay. Are you familiar with the integration of parts results? Maybe you haven't used it for a long time.
Yes,
But
yes.
so essentially that is what I have
just
done.
having
Hello.
Thank you.
I am not able to hear you. Is that clear to you, 46?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, it's just integration by parts, okay? And so
Hello,
the third, yes.
sir. In equation 48, is there multiply by 2 for first term? Partial L by partial G.
Why there is multiple of, no, it's not like that, because you just
Because
have a L function, which is going to
hmm,
be a function of G, Gx and Gy, okay?
yes, sir.
So there won't be any 2 there, okay?
Hmm. For 2D, only one term will be added, like del by del V.
Yeah, because you just think of 3 variables, G, Gx and Gy. So then you will have, in equation 45, um, you will have the del L del Gx term. Similarly, there will be a fourth term. Del L del G is already there, so I don't have to add another term there.
Okay, sir. Okay, okay.
So only del L del Gy, Hy will come over there. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I've just gone from 47 to 48 by just generalizing it to, adding one more coordinate. That's all. So if you look at it now, uh, let's go back to equation 44. Okay. So if I think of C of G plus epsilon H minus C of G divided by epsilon, then to first order, I have this integral dx of gradient GC and H. Okay. So if you look at the results here, uh, the integrand apart from H, if you look at the integrand, which is, and remove the H part out of that, then what you're going to see is this result. Okay. That the functional gradient of C with respect to G is going to be del L del G minus divergence of del L del gradient G. It's just that I have combined the last two terms in the notation. Okay. The same thing, but what I'm saying is whatever is in the square brackets is essentially the functional gradient of C. Okay. Is that clear to everybody? We have just turned this two-dimensional formula into this notation, okay, divergence notation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. Now you're familiar with this form, isn't it? Del L del Q dot, sorry, del L del Q minus say d dt of del L del Q dot, isn't it? From the mechanics problems, are you familiar with this form? Euler-Lagrange form?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And what do you do when you try to find equations of motion? You actually try to equate this to 0, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but what I'm telling you is a slightly different way of looking at it. That we want to eventually go to a place where this quantity becomes 0. But once you start with any initial guess solution, and if you evaluate this quantity, then it is not going to be 0 actually. Okay, so you want to iteratively go to a place where the functional gradient becomes very small. Okay. So when you studied this before, did you kind of think that this quantity on the right hand side, it was a functional gradient? You probably didn't see it in this form. Essentially said that the first variation has to be 0, and then you equate this quantity to 0. Okay, but what we are seeing is this quantity in square brackets. It is actually what we will call as functional gradient. Okay, and so what we want to do is the minimum of cost function that we are seeking is achieved when the functional gradient is 0 or very small in magnitude. So see, in classical mechanics, if you put this into your problems, this can lead to equations of motion, which you can sometimes solve analytically, meaning many times for simple problems there are analytical solutions and then you forget about this. But the idea is, in our case here, we are not going to have any analytical solutions. So we want to actually achieve this minimum. So where the functional gradient goes to 0. And again, it will not go to 0 exactly, but what it will mean is this functional gradient is actually going to become very small. And you see that C of G is a single number, but the functional gradient, can you tell me what is the dimension of the functional gradient? Is it a single number or is it something else? What do you think?
It's a matrix.
It is a matrix, yes. So it is a matrix of the same size as the image, okay? Because you are kind of differentiating the cost function C by every dimension of this matrix. So you can think of the image as a vector of n dimensions, where n is the number of pixels. And so you are differentiating the C with respect to every dimension. And so this is going to be a matrix. And so what we want to do is actually, if I now pick delta G in the direction of negative of this functional gradient, which is negative of this quantity in square brackets, then what will happen is I can hope that when I push this G in this direction, so you see what we are going to have is an initial guess solution, and then we are going to calculate this functional gradient for that guess solution, and then we are going to push the image in the direction of the negative functional gradient. If I push it in the direction of negative gradient, then so when I say negative functional gradient, it means that the negative sign is applied on all pixels now, okay? Because the functional gradient, it's an image itself, and so I go in the negative direction, and I hope that if I push the image by small amount in this direction, then what will happen is at the new image, G plus delta G, then I hope that the cost function will actually reduce in the numerical value. So practically, what we are going to do is go to a place till the functional gradient, this matrix, all elements have become very small. And then what we can say is that the algorithm that we are trying to minimize this cost function has essentially converged. Okay. And is this clear to? I'm kind of going slow, but I want to give examples now because you need to understand what to do here. Okay. If there is a practical problem, how to implement this, that I want to get into. But do you get this idea that the functional gradient is given by this equation 49, and then you want to push your image solution in the direction of negative functional gradient, so that you can hope that you will slowly move iteratively towards the minimum of this cost function. Okay, is that clear to everybody?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Now delta G, as you will see, will not be exactly negative of this, but there will be some constant multiplier which we will call as a step size. So this essentially negative gradient C we will use more as a direction, but how much to go in that direction, that will be decided by a step size. But I will go into all that details, gory details, as we proceed. Okay. Now, why we are calling it direction is because this is a vector, and so all components of this vector are moving in this direction. Okay, so G is a vector and delta G is a vector, and but this gives us a kind of a prescription that if I have defined a cost function, how should I update my image? How should I update each pixel of my image such that I will move in the direction of reducing cost function? Okay. So let us take an example so that this becomes a little more concrete. Okay. And so we took this total variation example where cost function CGN is integral of dx dy. We were already discussing this before. So we have G out minus A hat G in mod squared plus alpha times gradient G in. So the second term leads to the total variation cost function, a part of the cost function, and the first term leads to the error term. But inside the curly brackets, what we have is the quantity that is evaluated at individual pixel X and Y. And once you integrate over all pixels, then you get the cost function. So if I look at what is my L function, L G G in gradient G in, then the L function is whatever is there inside the curly brackets. So L function is actually this mod squared G out minus A hat G in plus alpha times modulus of gradient G in. Is that clear? What is the L function?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we will differentiate the individual terms. See, you observe that G in has appeared only in the first term, whereas the gradient G in has appeared in the second term. So when I want to evaluate, we will evaluate term by term, because you see in equation 49, we have to differentiate with respect to G, and we have to also differentiate with respect to gradient G. So when I look at the expression, I see that del L del G in will involve only the first term, whereas the gradient differential that will involve only the second term. Okay, and I'm going to do this a little bit explicitly, and I want you to kind of go through this calculation, okay, so that you understand what this is. So see, I'm going to treat A hat as a matrix because it's a linear operator. And so
Excuse me,
whatever
sir.
is, yes.
In the L function, sir, G out is also there. So it should also be a function of G out, G in, and the gradient of G in.
Yes, but the G out are just numbers, okay? Because G out is the image that you have recorded on the camera, isn't it? So that's like the data. So there, it's not a variable. I have already recorded G out as an image. So at every pixel of G out, there is some numerical value that came out of my camera. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it's not a variable, it's a given data essentially. Okay. And so the equation 53 is trying to prove the result in equation 52. So I'm writing this explicitly, all right. And instead of the integral, I'm using discrete terms. So let us say that the indices j, k, m are indices over all the pixels in the image. So they go from 1 to, so suppose this image is an n by n image, then each of the index goes on 1 to n squared. Okay. And right now everything is real valued. Later we will also go to a case where these quantities are complex value, because then the things change slightly. But right now let's just do real valued case. And so the first term of L here, what is it? We want to calculate this quantity at, say, the jth pixel. So in equation 53 on the left hand side, I have G out J, which is the jth pixel in the G out image, minus, now we want the jth pixel in A hat G in. So since A is treated here as a matrix, I have A hat JK matrix element operating on the kth thing, G in K, and then we have summation over K. Okay. So this summation just represents the jth element of A hat G in. All right. And then this G out J minus this summation, that is the error, but we are going to do square of the error. Okay, we are doing square so that, you know, all errors are positive, because it may so happen that this quantity is positive or negative at different pixels. And so you might sum up and think that the error is small. So to make the error positive at all pixels, we are just going to square it. Okay. And then this we want to differentiate with respect to, say, the mth pixel in the image J in. Okay. Now please work out this 53 yourself and convince that yourself that this is correct. Well, I have used one simple result here, which is you know, in the first line of 53, the last quantity is a Kronecker delta. Okay, so what you see is if I differentiate the kth pixel of G in with respect to the mth pixel of G in, then I'm going to get a Kronecker delta, delta Kn. Okay. And so what I have is this, and the minus sign is coming because there is a minus sign on the summation. And so I have, so please work it out and see if you are convinced about this. So because there was a Kronecker delta, I turned oh, sorry, this has to be, the Kronecker delta has to be, can you correct that, or is it okay? It's okay, I think. Maybe I could have used another index there, but it's okay. Is everybody okay with this result?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it gives you minus 2 A transpose. The transpose has come because, you know, M is now the second index and J is the first index. So if I do transpose, then I will have A transpose MJ. Okay, and that gives me -2 of A transpose G out minus. So the derivative with respect to mth pixel of J in is essentially -2 A transpose G out minus A G in, and the mth pixel of that. Okay. So let's move to the next slide, and now there is an interesting question here that how do you implement A transpose? Because if it was written as a matrix, then it is easy to think about it. But for example, in our earlier case, our A matrix was like a convolution. Okay. So we need to understand how to implement this A transpose. But I don't want to start it right now. We are just getting, the time is almost up. So we will work out what is A transpose in the next class. And then we will also work out the second term of the functional gradient, which is this divergence of del L del gradient G. Okay. So right now I'll not go ahead because we are just in time, and these calculations will take a little bit time. So everything is up to this point, things are clear, then I will stop. Okay.
Sir, the quantity A hat JM,
Yeah.
is the summation running over that or not? I mean, if it's not,
So right
summation
now
is
it is.
not.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, sir, I'm asking, is the summation going to run over AJM or not?
No, we are only getting the mth element of that, isn't it?
So the mth element, so how the A hat in the bracket in the last equation and the A hat transpose in the last in the front of it. So
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't the summation have run over AJM as well to get the A hat? I mean, I think it's just one single element, and in the bracket quantity there is a complete summation. So what is the difference
So let
between
me
the two?
see what I have written here. But I don't expect a summation there because I think there is a little confusion because there is a K appearing again. Maybe the way I have written is, I will clarify next time. Maybe I have written slightly.
Sir, I think summation will also be there in AJM because it is only the products chain rule is following in the differentiation. So
Yes, I have not applied the summation. So that summation has to happen over M. Because if I take the differential, so I miss the summation sign there. So if I take the sum over K, I'm taking out. And so, so that summation is missing here. Yeah, I will correct that. Okay. Because we are differentiating this summation k, and so inside the summation I have this ajk, you know. So there will be still a summation over m, okay, and that is why this A transpose has gone there. Yeah, I missed it in the writing that out. Okay. So I'll correct this and put it on the web. All right. Yes, you're correct. Otherwise, I can never write it as A transpose this way. Is that clear to everybody that there has to be a summation on M? That is, so that is missing here. So I have to add. I think while typing, I missed the summation. Okay. So please correct that. I will correct that in the notes before uploading. There has to be a summation over k, and so that summation over k will become summation over m because of Kronecker delta, and then you will have this result.
Fine, sir.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out. So we'll stop. We will meet tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Okay.